One of the greatest mysteries was why the inhabitants, the Puebloans, moved down into the canyons. One of the cliff houses is Spruce Tree House, which was what you call a Puebloan block of flats when built in 1210. It contains 130 rooms, home accommodating 6 to 80 people. The rocks are so well preserved it's hard to imagine it was built so long ago. Visitors today can explore the kivas, which are underground chambers. They were the heart of the community because they were used for religious ceremonies and political meetings. After being deserted by the Puebloans, Mesa Verde was lost for 700 years until cowboys looking for lost cattle stumbled on some of the cliff houses in the 1880s. Atlantis. Many locations have intrigued humankind, but one of the most fascinating is Atlantis. Described as one of the earliest and most advanced civilizations of humans, the city has virtually disappeared from the Earth's surface, leaving no clue to help treasure hunters or after the allegedly lost treasure of the kingdom. However, whether Atlantis ever existed has been hotly contested among experts for centuries, but a new discovery could be the final clue to unearth the long-lost kingdom. You can't talk about the origin of Atlantis without mentioning one of the greatest figures of history, Plato. The story was first told in two of Plato's dialogues, the Timaeus and the Critias, written about 360 BC. Plato, talking about the mysterious underwater kingdom, wrote, "For the ocean there was at that time navigable, for in front of the mouth which you Greeks call, as you say, the Pillars of Heracles, there lay an island which was larger than Libya and Asia together, and it was possible for travelers of that time to cross from it to other islands, and from the islands to the whole of the continent over against them, which encompasses that veritable ocean." Agreeing with Plato over the size of the island, Tertullian, an early Christian author who believed Atlantis once existed in the Atlantic Ocean, said it would be bigger than today's Libya and Asia combined. However, in many stories after Plato's era, the Atlantis was described as a big city. Also, Edgar Cayce, an American Christian mystic, suggested that the Atlantis and Eurasia were equal in size. How did Atlantis come to be? Here we cross into the realm of legend. Atlantis city was built by Poseidon, the god of sea, of storms and earthquakes, when he fell in love with a mortal woman, Cleito. He made this city on top of a hill on an isolated island in the sea to protect her and named it Atlantis. According to the story, Poseidon walked through the world to find the biggest island until he reached the biggest of them all, Atlantis, and found it to be inhabited by people who were more beautiful and intelligent than the rest of the world. He fell in love with Cleito when he saw her on the island, adding a romantic twist to an already tall tale. What did the ancient city of Atlantis look like? Water was everywhere. The new home built by Poseidon for his love in the city of Atlantis was surrounded by rings of water and land. The 5 rings of water were connected to the land with the help of 5 tunnels, where a colossal canal connected the outer rings of water straight to the ocean. The tunnels were large enough to accommodate ships, and gates and towers guarded every route to the city. Moreover, the city planners used red, white, and black rock to build the wall that surrounded the rings and decorated them with many precious metals. Meanwhile, in a dark twist, there was another hill called the Hill of Cleito, where Poseidon kept his wife captive because he wasn't sure of her loyalty. This prison-cum-palace hill was surrounded by huge moats and pillars. Atlantis had landmarks. One of the most remarkable was the golden statue of Poseidon. Cleito allegedly bore 5 pairs of twin sons to Poseidon, the eldest of which was named Atlas. The 10 sons inherited the great city, and the first child, Atlas, naturally became the first ruler of Atlantis. However, it is believed they also built a massive temple for their father, with a giant statue of Poseidon riding a chariot carried by winged horses. The statue was built in gold and placed in a temple with its spiral roof so high up that the clouds drifted through the spirals of the temple, probably the first skyscraper ever known to humankind. What was life like in Atlantis? You would probably have been a farmer if you lived in Atlantis, because the fertile and beautiful city of Atlantis, where half god and half human beings lived, was a self-sufficient region where people grew their own food and reared animals. Farmers in the city used to grow the crops in the fertile plains on the outskirts with the help of a well-maintained irrigation system. They also built beautiful buildings and other architectures from black and red stone materials. They also had access to rare metals and even alloys like brass. They also made and used crystals extensively for leisure and experimental purposes. They even played with volcanoes, which proved they had lots of courage and free time. Plato said Atlantis existed about 9,000 years before his own time and that its story had been passed down by poets, priests, and others. But Plato's writings about Atlantis are the only known records of Atlantis. So how did the city of Atlantis disappear? Well, since Atlantis had the help of the gods when it was started, it is only fitting that its demise came from the hands of the gods as well. Despite being a moral, spiritual people who lived in a highly advanced utopian civilization, the people of Atlantis dared to become greedy, petty, and morally bankrupt. This pissed off the gods, and as punishment, the gods sent out one terrible night of fire and earthquakes that caused Atlantis to sink into the sea. Now to the big question, was the city of Atlantis real? To some experts, the answer is no, and they claim the most apparent sign that Atlantis is a myth is that no trace of it has ever been found despite advances in oceanography and ocean.
Small commercial break. Shanti's Boutique now open. Shanti's Boutique now open. Commercial break.
In past decades. Though there remains much mystery at the bottom of the world's oceans, it is inconceivable that oceanographers, submariners, and deep-sea probes have somehow missed a landmass larger than Libya and Asia together. But, of course, that has not stopped enthusiasts from making speculations about the city's location. The point is, if they could somehow find the remains of the lost cities, it would prove beyond unreasonable doubt that Plato's Atlantis did exist. Many cities have been discovered centuries after they disappeared, so the search for Atlantis goes on. Many locations have been brought forward as the site of Atlantis, including some that are literally out of the world. Some folks have claimed that the lost city of Atlantis was on Mars or was just a colony of an alien civilization. In fact, the inhabitants of Atlantis City are believed to be the possessors of exceptional powers, such as the ability to control the weather and modify volcanic eruptions. However, ocean explorer Robert Ballard links Atlantis to a massive volcanic eruption on the island of Santorini in the Aegean Sea near Greece. Ballard says a highly advanced society that lived there disappeared suddenly, as with Atlantis. Similarly, Ignatius Donnelly also confirms the existence and disappearance of a mid-Atlantic continent in the exact location that Plato mentioned. But of course, there are other proposed locations. In 1679, the Swedish scientist Olaus Rudbeck published Atlant, a 4-volume work in which he tried to prove that Sweden was the original site of Atlantis and that all human languages were descended from Swedish. Rudbeck was considered authoritative in his homeland, and we can appreciate the bias, but few outside of Sweden found Rudbeck's arguments convincing. With time, archaeologists and historians have searched through swamps, a prehistoric city in coastal Spain, a suspicious undersea rock formation in the Bahamas, as they tried to pin down the lost city of Atlantis with all its fabulous treasures. For a long time, the island of Santorini had been the most accepted site until new findings emerged. In fact, the lost city of Atlantis may have been hiding in plain sight all these centuries. A site in Mauritius known as the Eye of the Sahara or the Richat structure bears lots of resemblance to the description given by Plato about Atlantis. First is that Plato said the name of the first king of Atlantis was Atlas. Coincidentally, Atlas was also the name of the first king of Mauritania, West Africa, the location of the Richat structure where it overlooks the Atlantic Ocean and having the Atlas Mountains to the north. A map of Herodotus from 430 BC even names that specific area Atlantis. Plato did explain the area in great detail, including all the measurements. Observable from space, the massive Richat structure has 2 concentric bands of resistant quartzite rocks, which form the ridges with a lower-level sedimentary rock between them. The layout and measurements of the concentric circles and the gateway to Atlantia, the name associated with the surrounding mountains, plain, fauna, coastline, and so forth, including massive, flat plains to the south and an entire mountain ridge to the north, fit Plato's lengthy description. Plato also said about Atlantis, 2 springs of water from beneath the earth, one warm water and the other of cold, and making every variety of food to spring up abundantly from the soil. And guess what? The presence of a freshwater spring has been located in the center of the Richat structure, whereas the presence of a hot spring in the past was quite likely due to the volcanic activity beneath it. Furthermore, the area still tends to hold fresh rainwater from streams running into it, growing vegetation in the middle of the desert to this day. Plato also claimed Atlantis has a very large stock of elephants, which were in Mauritius until they went extinct. Also, Plato's account shows that Atlantis was occupied about 11,000 years ago, supported by carbon dating of the area. Lastly, Plato talked about a flood. The topography surrounding the rich structure supports the notion that Africa had suffered a gigantic flood. In satellite images, it looks as if something literally swept over the entire area towards the sea. Let's hear what